I'm still wearing leggings underneath this, so whatever.
Good morning, guys. Welcome to our panel on how to dress your kids for less, and we're talking like less money and less impact. And I was just saying to Charlotte and Sally, like, God, you both look really glamorous, and I just feel like,
yeah, but we were confessing that we don't normally bother to wear makeup and wash our hair. Like, we've got 2 young kids, I've got 2 young kids. Like, this is just not what happens normally.
Yes, and it's all about activewear the whole time right now, especially.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to include this, have this discussion with you guys, because I think more and more of us are becoming aware of fast fashion and, as a concept, and possibly we think about it in relation to our own clothes and the things we're buying on the high street and things like that. And maybe we forget a little bit that the same fast fashion impact environmentally and on the people making that fast fashion applies to the clothes that we're buying for our kids as well. And I know that, our like school uniform, we have like a pre-loved school uniform thing at our school, and I always buy from that, because for me, the thought that somebody else's child might be having to make my child's clothes so that they can go to school just feels so wrong. And I think we kind of forget about that a huge amount, don't we? So I wanted to have this, but then obviously, there's that flip side that ethical clothes are more expensive because we're more reflective of the true cost. So we can't all afford to dress our kids in, the latest ethical, sustainable brands, especially when they grow so quickly and you've bought them something and 2 weeks later they've grown out of it. So I think there's loads of awesome chat to be had. Guys, if you're watching, Sue's joining us from Australia. That's really exciting. Sally, you're Australian, aren't you? So a little compatriot.
I am.
There's the chat box there, so do say hello, do chat in there, and if you've got a specific question, pop it in that ask a question box down there. But yeah, let's kick off with some introductions. Sally, do you want to go first and tell us all about you and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Sally. I'm one of the co-founders of Pure Bundle. I only just moved to London from Sydney last year with my family. And basically, look, the whole idea around starting a social business was, as a new parent, I've got a 3-year-old now, I just found I was getting so many clothes for him all the time, and babies can grow so fast. They can grow 7 sizes in 2 years. So it's just out of control. And I think that was a moment for me that it really dropped about all of the things coming into home, the consumption. So basically, Pure Bundle is a concept where we're trying to change the way people clothe their children. And we curate these capsule wardrobes of beautiful pre-loved clothes, basically nearly new condition, quality brands, and try and make it really simple for parents to use this as a service and purchase these capsules as their children grow, and they can even resell them back to us as well. So I think for us, it's really about trying to make sustainability simpler, because I feel like that's one of the main challenges and reasons, talking to people, why they find it hard to make more sustainable choices.
Brilliant. And Charlotte, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I always struggle with this one because I never know quite what to say. I think, I'm kind of 20 odd years into my career now, and I've come to this quite late, having spent like 10 years working for the Ministry of Defence and really struggling to know what to do to make the impact I wanted to make. And I did a geography degree at university. I was always about sustainability and then could never quite work out how to do it. And it wasn't until I had kids that I suddenly kind of found that impetus and the niche and the thing that was obvious to me about what needed to change. And I've been making my own sustainable changes in my own lifestyle, but wasn't quite sure where the impact that I could make had that light bulb moment. And it was like, this is crazy. I can't believe how many clothes I'm getting through. And actually for me, it was as much about the kind of selfish, I can't be asked to sort through all these clothes. I can't face every few months like having to buy new clothes, sort through the old clothes, store them somewhere or sell them. I don't have the time. I work full time. And so it was kind of this, as I say, this light bulb moment where I realized not only was the sustainability angle of it killing me, I hated how many clothes they were going through, but also from a hassle perspective, just the time and the stress, the kind of underlying stress of, what do I do with all of these clothes? And I hate that they're in great condition and that they might not go on to somewhere where they're going to get they're going to get kind of the use that they deserve. I can't bear throwing them away. And that drove me to start to kind of think about what to do. And I spent actually 2 and a bit years thinking about it. After I had my first baby, I would literally sit breastfeeding thinking, how do I turn this into an idea? How do I do something with it? And was working in retail at the time. I was working for Not on the High Street as their head of digital products. So kind of having all these ideas and watching consumers and thinking about, how people consumed and how people prioritize convenience and quality and value. And then when I had my first baby, my second baby, just realized I hadn't done anything with it. I was on maternity leave. Here was my opportunity. So set up the Little Loop just under a year ago now, while I was on maternity leave. And essentially we're a rental service for children's clothing. The main driver being that we can reduce the environmental impact and the environmental footprint of children's clothes, but in the same way as Sally's referred to, also trying to reduce the hassle for parents, trying to make it easier for people to dress their children's clothes, cheaper for people to dress their children in the clothes, and just better value and give them access to high quality clothing as well, because I think, as we'll touch on, it's so important that they are able to access that you're able to access clothes that are of a quality which means that they will last longer, and which means that, as Jen referred to, they're not going to be being produced in sweatshops by children. So all of that bundled together is the aim of the Little Loop. And it looks like we've lost Jen.
I think we have. So perhaps we should power on. That was wonderful. Should we? I think she was going to ask us about something around the impact of the fashion industry, and our thoughts on that. Do you want to start with that, Charlotte?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, again, as Jen's referred to, the impact of the fast fashion industry is ridiculous. I think in the last 10 years, the fashion industry's gone from producing, it's always been reasonably damaging, but in the last 10 years, it's gone from producing a collection twice a year, which is reasonably manageable, to this constant rollout of collections, which means that people are being driven more and more and more to buy new things, to buy cheaper things, because to buy them all the time, you can't afford to buy the more expensive quality items. And so the whole industry is kind of sliding into this kind of self-perpetuating overconsumption. And, just in terms of the stats, I think at the moment, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation discovered that if the clothing industry continues on its current path, it's actually going to use over a quarter of the carbon allowance for us for the kind of 2-degree global warming budget. So that's just the fashion industry on its own will take up a quarter of our carbon budget. That's not to say that the fashion industry is is the most polluting industry out there. Of course, the oil industries and others are equally as polluting or more polluting, but it is growing unsustainably, and we're just not going to be able to sustain it. Sally, what else do you have to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So look, I think as you've mentioned, there are quite a number of challenges and things happening in the fashion industry, particularly around that speed of fashion and the impact that ends up having on, people producing these clothes, on environmental degradation, on natural resources. And there are many things I think we have to address, but one of the biggest things I feel like we can address, in our everyday lives is around the waste. And I remember watching the War on Waste series that I think was here in the UK, and there was also a version in Australia. And for me, that was just like a pin drop moment, because, speaking about all the different ways through our everyday lives with food, with fashion, coffee cups, whatever it might be, there's so many ways that our society is operating at the moment that results in more convenience and a lot of waste happening. And I think one of the things that really hit it for me with fashion is that McKinsey says that 60% of all clothing produced ends up in incineration.
Sally, I don't know, can you hear me? Because I can't hear you at the moment. I've lost you. Aha, here's Jen.
Hello. So sorry, my internet dropped out. So now I'm trying to do it on 4G on my phone. So
That's okay. I can't hear Sally anymore, and it looks like neither can Sue. Everyone's having
us.
Sorry, Jen.
Just wondering if Sally can hear us, because if she can, then let me type it in the chat. The best thing is to just refresh her browser. So close your window and come back in again. Oh man, we were doing so well until Friday. And also,
I think Sally's just covered the fast fashion problem, but we couldn't hear her. She was giving an amazing answer all about waste.
Oh no. Let's close Sally down. And what colour's the? Sorry, the kids are talking to me. What colour's the light? It's blue again, is it? Mm-hmm. Okay. I was frantically like, because they were on Netflix as well. I was like, turn Netflix off. Have a go and see what happens. Okay, so at the moment it's just me and you, Charlotte. Isn't this exciting? Let's see if we can find Sally and invite her on again and see if that works. Just wait with bated breath.
Challenges.
She's back.
Hello.
Hey, we can hear you.
Awesome. Can we hear you, Sally?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Can we hear you? Yay, we can hear you. Right. Fabulous. Brilliant. Charlotte just said you did a really awesome bit on fast fashion with the kids, but we couldn't hear you. So do you want to repeat that?
So to follow on from Charlotte, the main gist of it was many issues in the fashion industry today, but I think the penny really dropped for me when I saw the War on Waste series. And there was one in Australia just like there was in the UK. And just seeing how pervasive, I guess, in our society today, sort of the way that we operate and just everyday things we do, whether it's food or fashion, coffee cups. And I think it's one of the biggest areas we can actually address in terms of how we behave or decisions we make or how we consume. So there is a stat by McKinsey which just really hit this home for me in terms of fashion waste. And 60% of all clothing produced ends up in incinerators or landfill within a year, which is just staggering when you think about that, 2/3 of everything produced. So I feel like there's such scope to, reuse, repurpose, find better ways of getting the things people need into their hands. And I think the key to that is trying to make it easier for that whole process to happen.
Definitely.
Yeah, I've got kind of there's so much data around it. So, but like less than 1% of the material that's used to produce clothing is recycled into new clothing. So even if you recycle it, because obviously there's landfill and there's recycling. I think people think that recycling is this panacea and you can send your clothing off to the textiles banks and it's fine. But actually, and I spoke to the Salvation Army about this when we were talking about where we might send clothes which had reached the end of their life. And, they said they get so much stuff through and actually the majority of it they can do very, very little with. And it does end up going overseas and being sent into landfill in other countries. So we feel like it's being recycled, but it's not. And actually we're just passing on the problem as well. So it is massive. The problem is massive. Yeah.
And do you think that kids' clothes are better or worse? I think, Sally, you've already, is it seven clothes sizes in 3 years or something? That kind of flags to us that maybe it's a bit more of an issue, is it?
Yeah, so 7 sizes in the first 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Because they're growing so much in that first phase. And then, of course, it does slow down a bit. But I think, in a way, it's even more challenging with kids because they're growing so incredibly fast. You're always needing new things. Even if you've had other children, if your children are born, in different seasons, you still might not even be able to use half those clothes, or it depends how gendered you dress your children. There's all sorts of reasons why you may not even use them. People love giving gifts, clothing gifts. Often that might go to the back of the wardrobe. It's the wrong size, the wrong season. You don't like it, whatever. So there's all of that. So I think there's real scope to try and, find better ways of doing this. And I think people already do things like they're swapping clothes, they're borrowing clothes, people are buying from charity shops. But I think we can make it even more mainstream and just provide other ways to facilitate it and get people to think about it more as well.
Yeah, and that's so interesting what you said about the seasons, because I've got 2 boys and we didn't know with either of them what we were having. And so obviously when Samuel arrived and he was a boy, I was like, awesome, we've already got loads of boy clothes, but he's an April baby and William's an October baby. And that just hadn't occurred to me at all, that they're 6 months apart and they'll be in, raincoats at different times and all those sorts of things.
I have two girls who were both born in January, and even then, and they're not that dissimilar in size, but even then, actually, I found that with the second, she hasn't ended up wearing all of her sister's clothes. So, you stash those clothes, you put them away thinking at least they'll get used twice. And that isn't automatic. I actually did a bit of new research kind of the last few days for this and found out some stats that I hadn't heard of before. You'll buy over 1,000 items for a child before they are no longer a child. So kind of, up to 1,000 items of clothing per child. Now, obviously, if you're reusing those, then the second child, that will be fewer. But let's assume you don't reuse 100% of those. So 1,000 items is a lot. And that's actually Hubbub, who did this research, discovered that the average family will spend £11,000 per child on clothing. So obviously there's the environmental impact, which is massive, because if you think about all of the production of those clothes, so there's 1,000 garments, let's say they're all made of cotton. Cotton uses huge amounts of carbon and water to grow. Then there's obviously the footprint of the actual production process, the factories, the shipping, the transportation. That's for 1,000 garments. And you're doing that for multiple children, especially if you've got children of different genders or born at different times of year. And then the other stat that I found, which I thought was absolutely fascinating, was that there are 183 million items of clothing, baby clothing this is, stashed in people's homes. So 183 million items of clothes that people have put away in a cupboard thinking, we'll hand them down, we'll use them for another child, etc. And if you think about the kind of carbon footprint of those clothes, the way I look at it is that for children's clothes essentially could have four uses. They can be worn by up to 4 children. So every item of clothing that's shoved in a cupboard which could be being reused 4 times, is essentially actually causing people to go out and buy 3 more items of clothing. So those 183 million items are actually worth more like 500 odd million items, because there's all the extra items that people are buying as a result of the fact that those ones are kind of sequestered in cupboards. So the carbon footprint of all of that is absolutely humongous. I think it's I've written it down because I'm absolutely useless at stats. It's something like 2 million kilos of carbon.
Wow.
It's just obscene. It's enough to power a coal-fired power station for 6 months.
No way.
Yeah, that's the impact of just the clothes that are in people's cupboards.
Because when you put it into terms like that, because we were talking about this with Luke when he was talking about carbon footprints and tons of carbon equivalent and all that sort of thing, you just sort of zone out and it doesn't mean anything. And you said 2 million kilos, and I thought that sounds like quite a lot, but doesn't but when you say that's enough to power a coal-fired power station for
it's absolutely bonkers.
And actually I went I can't remember if it was the end of last year, because I have set up like a reusable party kit that's obviously kind of on hold at the moment, and I went and did a nearly new sale to sort of promote it. And the volume of stuff that people were unpacking, so people were coming with their baby clothes and stuff to hopefully sell on. I was just mind blown by this table next to me was just rammed with baby girl stuff. And I was like, they can't have even worn each of those things once. Like there was such a sheer volume of it. And, and they didn't even sell, I don't know, not even a quarter of it. So they've got to pack all that stuff.
No, that's it. That's absolutely it. But I did the same thing with my second baby after she kind of grown out of just the first few months of clothes. And it was actually partly research for the Little Loop and trying to work out, what's the need here. Went to a nearly new sale and had exactly that same experience. Equipment sells very quickly, baby bounce, all that kind of flies out the door. People queue up for it. But the number of clothes that were being packed away at the end of that sale. And then you're thinking, well, what are people going to do? And the people were trying to sell it for kind of 50 pence. It wasn't like they were charging a lot of money for it. So a common argument that we hear, and this is a valid argument, and one of the reasons that children's clothes maybe do have a lower footprint is because people are more willing to buy secondhand. And people are willing to donate to charity shops. And I've just seen somebody's put in the comments, giving away to charity shops being more socially acceptable. Actually, I think with children's clothes, it is relatively socially acceptable, but it's not that panacea in the same way as recycling, because it's not all going to get bought and reused again just because of the system, the charity shop system and the nearly new sale system. And I think that's what Sally and I are both trying to tackle, is making a way that clothes can get reused more socially acceptable, easier for parents, slightly more normal, if you like. So it's not having to go and rummage through kind of piles and piles of clothing. It's trying to do it in a way that just makes it easier to adopt.
Yeah. And I think too, the experience of it, and trying to make the experience fun and to make it enjoyable and to make it more simple, because I think, oftentimes things that may be, more eco-friendly do also require a lot of effort. Going and rummaging in stores or in sales, you may not actually find what you need. And I know I've done a lot of it here and a lot of back in Australia for research. And, the way that we curate Capsule Wardrobes is to try and go, okay, your child is 6 months, it's coming into summer, here's, 5 to 15 items that all, mix and match together and the same sort of look and the same sort of, tops and bottoms, all that kind of thing, so that take the thinking out of it. And I know for us to even, create those capsule wardrobes, there is a lot of effort behind it. And I mean, as we scale and grow, it'll get easier and easier to do that. But the fact is to try and, get pre-loved clothes and get things that, you'd really want to dress your child in and things, you like, all the style, all of that. It's not as easy as just going and going to, H&M on the website.
And, I was one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, what are the options for sort of sourcing clothes for our kids that are, less impact and things. And obviously we've already talked a little bit about charity shops, and we've talked about nearly new sales, which I think would be our kind of immediate go-to. But as you say, if we're like stuck at home with a new baby and a toddler, and, maybe we haven't got the time, energy, motivation to go and stand rummaging through in a charity shop and hope that they've got the size and the gender and the things that we want. So that's why, I think what both of you are doing, and I want you to both explain in a little bit more details kind of how your models work. So Sally, how do you actually, I don't know, I can't think it cut off when, no, I heard you do your intro, but so, but just tell us in more detail how it works. And I'd be really intrigued, how do you source the clothes that you then curate into these amazing bundles?
Yeah, sure. And I know it's a new concept, so we're still playing around with, how do we explain this best that people can understand it as quickly as possible. So tell me if you don't understand what I'm saying. But essentially, you go onto our website and you can shop these collections of clothes by size, by gender, which includes gender neutral, or by look. So we've actually got 9 different types of looks that we have in these capsules to try and, I guess, help parents to find things that they might generally be drawn to, whether it's, we've got one called They Thrive Like Wildflowers, which is our most popular type, which is really earthy autumn.
Oh, Sally's frozen. No, I hope she comes back.
Let me let her know.
The internet is not loving us today.
It's not, is it? I've been having some issues this morning. I was like, please don't do that at lunchtime. Do you want me to go and then
go?
Oh, she's back.
Where did you lose me?
You're all
like wildflowers.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay, so that's our most popular look at the moment, and basically it's all these earthy neutral tones. We've got another one that's never met a color I didn't like, and that's all about rainbows and splashes of color. So different things, so that parents, as their child grows, they can come back each time to the website and find those same sorts of looks and vibes that they're enjoying. And the intention is that they can shop the site. At the moment, these collections are either 5 to 15 items, just because we're still really testing and finding what parents enjoy. And there'll be tops and bottoms, jackets, things that all match in together that you can really easily mix and match. And so parents just order it like a normal e-commerce site, purchase the capsule. We send it out in reusable packaging, and that packaging also encourages parents to send clothing back to us, either when they're finished with those clothes or other clothes that meet our criteria of being great quality brands, really clean and in great condition. And yeah, parents can just choose to keep the capsule if they like, or return things when they're done. And they can also choose, if a few items in the capsule they don't end up liking, they can also just return those items to us.
And so can people effectively like sell their stuff back to you, or is it just okay, cool.
Exactly. So they can either get a portion of the proceeds once we sell, so consignment, or they get store credit, or they can donate to a charity on their behalf. And that's actually Little Village. They're a fabulous organisation if people aren't familiar with them, and they help vulnerable families with all sorts of things they might need for their babies. And so they're doing amazing work, particularly even in amongst the pandemic.
And what age groups have you got on there?
So at the moment, we're doing newborn to 3 years, just because we really want to try and get as much feedback as we can, really test this out with parents. And people do keep asking us for bigger sizes. So that's absolutely the intention. But at the moment, we're just trying to focus on that size range of babies grow so fast.
Because one of the things I found, as my boys get bigger, is it's actually harder to find secondhand clothes in charity shops for bigger kids. And I'm not, I presume, because maybe they wear them for longer and they get more worn out, or quite what it is. But one of the questions because I'm writing book number 2 at the moment, and it's all about sustainable-ish parenting, and it's amazing to see how much things have changed. So I'm on the kind of baby and toddler stage at the moment, and mine are now 9 and 11, and it's really fascinating looking at how much things have changed in that time, and concepts like this didn't exist when mine were, or if they did, I didn't know about them when mine were little. But I was writing about Pure Bundle, Sally, and I was like, I really want an adult version of this.
People say that too.
I'm rubbish at fashion and putting looks together and curating stuff, but I shop a lot from the charity shop, but I don't know if other people find this, that I end up going, oh, I like that and I like that, and then I have this big mismatched wardrobe where nothing really goes.
Yeah, my wardrobe's like that too.
So Sally, I really want you to curate me bundles of secondhand stuff in one size for my lifestyle, and then I will quite happily ship them back to
people keep saying it, and mums keep saying it as well about maternity clothes, because that's another one where you use them such a short time. So I think there really is something here, and this whole idea of a capsule wardrobe, it's quite American, I think. I don't think it necessarily resonates as much here in the UK, and I'm still trying to understand what resonates as an Australian here. But the whole idea of a capsule wardrobe is, if you have stuff that mix and matches together and seamlessly goes together, you don't have to think so much in the morning. You just know that your overcoat and your jumpers and your jeans, it just goes, and it takes the hassle out of it. And you have to have less stuff because it mix and matches. So it's another way of consuming less, spending less, making life easier, all of that.
See, I don't think particularly in the morning. I just put the same pair of jeans and jumper on every day.
One of the joys of the pandemic, no one else has seen this.
Yep. There's someone on here, probably a question for both of you as well. Any advice for older kids? Again, daughter's 5 but wearing 7 to 8, and just ended up having to buy from H&M Ethical, because it's hard to source secondhand stuff as well at the moment, isn't it? But
we'll be going up to those ages. That's certainly our intention at the moment. We're only at age 2 to 3, but we're certainly intending to go up to those ages, because we're hearing from a lot of parents, the same as you said, Jen, that it's harder to source secondhand stuff for older kids. But there are brands that do it. It's just they're harder to find. Yeah.
Charlotte, tell us how the Little Loot works.
So it's the Little Loot's based on 2 premises. The first that I've already mentioned, which is that you can get at least 4. You should be able to get at least 4 cycles out of children's clothing. So when I was first thinking about what to do, how to tackle this problem, I thought about secondhand and thought about resale. But my concern was that didn't really guarantee that the clothes would get their maximum life. And for me, rental was the only way to control that. So by me continuing to own the clothing and renting them to people to use them as a service, those clothes come back, and we can absolutely guarantee that every garment will reach its maximum life. So it may not be 4 times, it may only be 2 times, but it may be 6 times if it's a coat or if it's something really durable. So rather than the kind of slightly haphazard nature of secondhand in charity shops and things where you can't guarantee that people will clear out their closets and keep things in circulation, that's one of the premises of rental. And the other side of it is that through speaking with lots of brands, we discovered that brands are desperate to be involved in the circular economy, so keeping their clothes in circulation. And especially the ethical and sustainable brands, who are the ones that we would want to promote anyway, because they create clothes which are much better quality than H&M and your average high street brand. They do that because they care, and because they think that things should be made organically, and because they think that things should be handed on, and they want their garments to last. And of course, there's a benefit to them from a marketing perspective having good quality clothes, but they haven't been seeing the benefit of that. So for us, what we do is we partner with brands. So we take the clothes from them, but they take a share of our rental revenue, which means that they're incentivized to create really good quality clothing, because the better quality the clothing is, the more it will rent, and therefore the more revenue they can generate, essentially. So essentially what we're doing is we're building profitability for brands into a circular model, which should hopefully help to drive the whole fashion system towards being more circular and towards designing for circularity and designing for long lasting. It disincentivizes creating cheap clothing, which is highly fashionable, which goes out of fashion really quickly. And obviously we're starting small. We're starting with age 2 to 3 children's wear, and we aim to go up to age 10. We've had people saying they'd love it for teenagers, and it exists for adults, albeit for adults it tends to be more occasion wear. So for a consumer, what you would do is you would come on and you would subscribe, we have to run it on a subscription basis realistically, because with children's wear, economies of scale are so tight. So a children's garment, if you took one single garment, it would be renting for £5, and obviously with postage and laundry and all of that, essentially it would just be impossible to run, because we do get a lot of it's subscription, but we hope that the value makes it worthwhile. So essentially, for a set subscription fee every 3 months, you pay £50 every 3 months. You get an average of 6 items. You take them home. You can choose anything you want to from the site. The garments are all priced by credit. So you get 100 credits. You can spend those on the site. So if you wanted, 2 raincoats and a T-shirt, then it might only be 3 items, because raincoats are quite expensive. But if you wanted just T-shirts, you could get 8. You take those, you have those at home as long as you want to. We advise that people swap every 3 months because of seasonality and growth. So we'd expect that, but you can keep hold of them for longer. You can swap them sooner. Basically included in your subscription is a free swap every 3 months. You just have to pay for postage if you want to swap more frequently. So the idea is that it kind of fits with the natural rhythms of people's children's wardrobes anyway, but it just guarantees that instead of having to kind of resell on those clothes or whatever, or them getting stuck in the back of a wardrobe, because they get sent back to us, we turn those clothes around, launder them, repair them if they need to be repaired, and then we relist them so that they can be re-rented. Brand new clothes cost slightly more to rent. Clothes that have been worn before cost less to rent. So again, we're trying to reflect for parents that if you take the hit and have something which is slightly more worn, then you'll pay a bit less for it, and so you can get more for your credits. So we tried to build a system which really works for parents, which is cost effective, which takes the hassle out of it. Just like Sal, you send the clothes back, you don't have them lingering in your wardrobe anymore. But also which, because it's baked into the brands as well, should hopefully not just be a kind of tag on to the fashion industry, but we're hoping that we can try and change the way the fashion industry works.
Yeah, and I think, I can't remember, it was definitely on one of your 2 websites, I think, this thing about, we keep hold of clothes, and you alluded to it, Charlotte, about, all this sequestered carbon almost stashed in our cupboards, because we might or might not have another baby, and it might or might, and will it be the same gender and things, whereas actually this just takes all of that out of it, because even when you have another baby, you just get a new bundle of clothes to arrive. But
exactly.
What was I going to ask you? Oh, to put that £50 a quarter in context, how do you have any stats around the average amount that people will spend? I know you said that horrific amount of the whole total of clothes, but how much do people spend a year generally on young children's clothes?
I think it's about £1,000 a year.
Wow.
The official statistics from the Office of National Statistics, because I'm a geek, it's £460 per child.
Right.
But that is that's across the socioeconomic scale. So obviously there are some families who are spending a huge amount more, and there are some families who are spending a lot less. So based on the kind of stats from Hubbub, if it's £11,000 across kind of 12 years of life, it's just under £1,000 a year. But the way we look at it is we're charging about between a quarter and a third of RRP. So essentially, if you were to buy those clothes new, it would cost you 3 or 4 times as much. obviously, if you hang on to them for slightly longer, then you're getting close to RRP, but you should hopefully never end up spending as much as you would spend to buy it new. And you know, in most cases, you'll spend around about a third of what you spend to buy it new. The main thing that we're trying to do as well is offer those brands. And I think, you know, this goes to another thing that you can do to try and be more sustainable, more ethical in your children's clothing, even if you're not remotely interested in rental and resale. Please always try and buy from the brands that you can, as much as you can afford to buy from those better brands, because they're ethical, their production processes and practices are so much better. You know, they're paying fair wages to their workers, they're using organic cotton, so it's being farmed sustainably. And so what we're doing is, the brands we've got on offer are Frugi, Kite, Bowden, who, believe it or not, are actually very sustainable. Little Green Radicals, Grass and Air, Jejuni, they're our current brands, and they are all really up there in terms of their ethical and sustainable practices. But it also means that the clothes that they're producing are much higher quality. So, you know, buy from those brands. If you're not interested in renting and you're not interested in buying secondhand, then buy from those brands, because the clothes will then last longer. So at least then, if you're motivated enough to do it, you can sell them on, and they will get more and more life, and that will have a much bigger sustainable impact, but also a better ethical impact as well. Yeah,
and like some of those names are sort of news to me, and maybe that's because I sort of out of the loop of littler kids' clothes, but certainly Frugi, I'm still forcing. I think their sizing goes up to 10 to 11. I think, and I'm you know, my 11-year-old will still just about fit in their trousers, and they are such good quality.
Yeah.
And you know, they have even where they've gone through the knees. Like there's like 2 other layers of fabric underneath, and you know, and I've been able to patch them and things, and the younger ones still been able to wear them. And certainly when they were younger as well, we've had stuff that, you know, William wore, then Samuel, and then we've passed them on to his cousins, to their cousins, and they've both worn them, and you know, and they still look amazing, and they're still
and they're just so lovely. They're so, you know, brights aren't for everybody, and I'm conscious that on our site at the moment we've only got these really bright colours, which are very, but there are other brands as well, which like Jejuni, who would just bring on, and some others that are a bit more muted, like Sally's kind of colours and things like that. And so, you know, but they're gorgeous. I've got a room full of the clothes next door, like Frugi, and I kind of just keep wanting to go and throw myself in them and roll around because they're so gorgeous. And it's so hard because my eldest is 3, but because all these brands do size up quite well, she fits into them. So I've subscribed to my own service to test it, but also because the clothes are so nice, and it was so hard to choose, because actually having seen them all in the flesh, even better quality than they come across on the site. So these brands are absolutely incredible. They don't need to spend this much money on production and charge so much. It will be affecting their markets, but they're doing it because they believe that, you know, that the impact is important. And you know, having now met with the founders of Kite as well, Kite, the guys that run Kite are fabulous and really care and source their clothes really carefully. And having met with them, and then, you know, they've been so helpful and so enthusiastic to come on board with this initiative, because they care. You know, I thought it would be a really hard sell, but they've all said, absolutely, we'd love to try this, because why would we not want to reduce the impact of what we're doing? Even if it does, you know, people have said, well, doesn't it cannibalize their sales? Well, no, because hopefully what it will also do is introduce people to those brands who might then go on and buy some clothes from them as well. Because they don't want to rent all of their wardrobe. They want to buy, you know, so we see that actually all of these things kind of sit neatly together. So, you know, sales service, my service, and buying new and buying secondhand. You don't have to do one thing exclusively. It will make sense for 5% of your wardrobe to be rented, but 20% of it to be secondhand. You know, so it's about building kind of something which fits for you, not feeling like you've got to do one thing exclusively, but you know, making it fit your lifestyle, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we mixed and matched, you know, and especially like if grandparents or aunts and uncles were wanting to buy something for Christmas or birthday, kind of point them to those more expensive brands that we might not be able to have sort of justified or whatever. But again, with, like you said, I certainly found with Frugi, like they're designed for the kids to be able to grow with them. So the trousers all come mostly with a roll up that looks as good with a roll up or without, and a lot of them have got, you know, like elasticated waist, stuff like that. So they really do last. And what else was there? Oh yeah, that could mix and match thing is, so, you know, it might be that people choose to rent those more expensive items from you, and that they've got some secondhand bits and pieces as well in there.
Yeah.
So what are the sort of brands and things that you look out for when you're, because do you sort of scour charity shops and things to find the stuff, or how do you source the stuff that's on your site?
So the main way we're going forward is getting clothes from individual parents. And so we've also got people who decide to just sell with us and haven't actually purchased before. And so we just send out that reusable pack for them, and then they can send us through the clothes. And so that's the majority of the clothes we're getting through. And I guess, our focus is really on trying to reuse a lot of what's already in existence. So the way we're trying to really have that focus on quality, though, is we do have a certain brand list that we accept from. So we don't accept supermarket or fast fashion brands. And the main focus is on the higher end of high street premium brands and designer. So trying, I guess, to really make sure that the selection of brands in our capsules are, some of those brands that parents know and love, like Petit Bateau or Frugi or Gicardi, those sorts of brands that hopefully do have more longevity in them as well.
Yeah, and the other thing is those brands, like I certainly know with Frugi, and I think with like Mini Bowden and stuff, there's so many. You can pick them up because they do last. You can pick them up secondhand, and they do hold the value to be able to sell them on secondhand. And the other thing, like Frugi have quite regular sales, so that's when I'd kind of hop on and buy the pants and socks and all that sort of thing as well. For the
they also host swishes, so they actually So again, like these brands are all thinking about more innovative ways. So they will host their own swishes where they get people to come, bring their clothes, and swap them. I don't know if Frugi makes a profit from it. I don't think they do. I think it's just, our clothes are great. We want to promote what good quality they are, and therefore it makes sense for us to kind of facilitate this. But if you're out there thinking, well, how else can I access these clothes? Obviously there's Facebook Marketplace and things like that where you can. It's hard work, and like I've listed things on there and it's taken me hours to list them, and then because I've released them at the wrong time of day, or they're the wrong season because they've just grown out, so you don't always get the uptake that you want to, and often you kind of will lose money on them. But equally, if you're buying, there's a lot out there, so there are other places to source them. I'd say the only other thing I'd add to the kind of how can you kind of source clothes better and is be really mindful about what you're buying. So not just the brands, but also the material and the design. So don't buy things with sequins on. First of all, it's plastic, which is shit. But second of all, it will go out of fashion quickly. The sequins will fall off, and so you won't be able to sell it on, etc. So don't buy things which maybe avoid unicorns have kind of lasted a long time, right? But fads, things where next season people aren't going to want it. And don't buy thin cotton, don't buy bad, ideally don't buy materials which will shed microplastics. So try and be mindful of what you're buying. If you can buy corduroy, denim is quite high intensivity in terms of its production, but at least it lasts a long time. Organic cotton, think about what you're buying, because then at least even if you only get 6 months wear out of it, it will hopefully go on and have many more lives if you keep recirculating it.
Yeah. And God, my brain is completely mush today. I had a really
5 days of this journey.
Doing so well.
Oh, sequins. I read Lucy Siegel, journalist, has a book called To Die For, which I think is several years old now. Anyway, but she said in there that the vast majority of sequins are sewn on by children because they have little fingers, nimbler fingers. And the thought that, oh my goodness, that some child has had to sit there at home when they should be at school, like with really crappy light and all this, and sew sequins on. The kids all love those ones that change colours when you do that, don't they? And I just, my heart kind of breaks because we don't. I'm sure if we knew that, none of us would buy.
Yeah, I think people assume that these things are all mechanized now and no impact, but there's impact in everything that we buy. Like I've heard it I've heard it this week from people on your panels, but I've heard it so many times that you vote with your pound, and where you spend your money is how that's how you can have an impact and change the way the world works. And you do have to think about everything that you buy, because it will have an impact somewhere down the line.
Definitely. And I put you know, this I completely used to think, before we did our year buying nothing new, if I had thought of, if someone had asked me who makes your clothes or where are your clothes made, I would have said in a factory, and yes they are, but I never would have thought that there's some poor woman sat there sewing the same seam over and over again, you know, or some poor child or whatever. It just wouldn't. And so actually, you know, if I'm sure if you ask people when they're going into, you know, Primark, H&M, like, is this the kind of world you want to support? And I know it's not always that black and white, and you know, economics and finances and things come into it. But the vast majority of people say, oh my God, no, of course that isn't what I want to support. And so having other ways that we can, it makes it easier to access alternatives is so amazing. How do we make it? Because Shiri's said here, you know, I wish giving clothes from charity shops. So if somebody's got a new baby and you're giving them a gift, actually buying something from a charity shop and giving it to them was sort of more socially acceptable. And this brings us on to the question that I think one of you two suggested about, you know, how do we make it more appealing to parents to access these kinds of things? Do you think there's still a stigma around clothing your child in secondhand clothes or not buying new clothes?
A little bit.
Do you want to go first?
Sorry, Sally.
Oh, sure. So I think in certain circles, people are completely happy with pre-loved clothes and just think it's a smarter way to go. And then I think there are people who just would never dream of it, and they're people that we're pass their clothes on, and others will be able to, you know, enjoy their secondhand clothes. And I think, you know, you're never going to be able to convince anyone, and that's okay. Everyone will have different ways. But I think something quite encouraging I've been seeing is people actually starting to buy clothes as a secondhand clothes as a gift, and that actually did surprise me because I never thought that would happen. But people have been saying that, and I guess another thing I've seen is customers actually requesting, you know, gift vouchers, so that then, you know, they maybe aren't actually giving secondhand clothes, but they're giving a gift voucher, which means someone else can choose it. So there are probably sort of steps and ways that you can encourage people to perhaps change their behavior, and a kind of a more softly approach to it. But I feel like, you know, there is still a real behavioral change around something like sharing clothes more for certain people. And, you know, if you look at things like Airbnb, you look at Uber, you know, before those companies became enormous, we would not have thought about, a lot of us, about going and staying in someone else's home or getting into a car driven by a stranger. But it's amazing how over time, you know, that becomes so normalized, and there's this social proof, and people see others doing it. They have the experience. They see there's actually stuff about it that's better than the hotels they used to stay in, than the taxi service, which wasn't so nice. Although here in the UK, it's pretty amazing. And so I think also it really takes, you know, influencers, and I mean that in the sense of people who will try something new, and people who, you know, are values based. And I've seen that a lot in the talks this week around leading with their values. And if you see more of those people trying these new things, then it also encourages others around them to try new things too. And so I think we just have to keep pushing forward and making sure that we're putting out there with different sorts of ways people can be more sustainable, that there's other benefits to it. It's not just about the sustainability, and try and connect with different people, whether it's about the lower cost, whether it's about, you know, quality for less, whether it's about making your life easier. Try and also bring people in through those other types of ways.
Yeah, and you know, I was just thinking, God, I would have loved it if someone had given me a voucher for either of your services when, you know, when mine were little. And actually, you know, if I now have any friends or anything who have new babies, I will definitely, you know, I just think that would be such a lovely thing to have. And I don't know if you guys have come across Whirly, which is like a toy subscription site.
Yeah, we're actually running a competition with them today.
Oh, really?
And I rent from them. They're amazing.
Yeah, and so I'm actually, it's my nephew's second birthday coming up, and he's got an older brother who's 5, and we've been really rubbish about buying them presents, and we've been handing down a lot of stuff from my boys. But I want to speak to my sister-in-law and say, look, you know, are you, if I buy them a Whirly subscription between the two of them for birthday and Christmas this year, like, is that something you'd be up for? And it might be something that, you know, she might not have wanted to or felt she could justify financially herself or whatever, but actually for us that takes all the heartache, the pain and anguish of like, I don't really want to get them anything because they've already got so much stuff, but I feel like I should get them something because they're my brother's kids and I love them. And, you know, it's really difficult, isn't it? So Yeah,
at Christmas with, and I think a lot of people that I've spoken to about our service have raised this. Grandparents like to buy new things for babies and for children because it's something they can do and it's a positive feeling, and they enjoy it, right? And you know, my mother-in-law is wonderful, but she gets a real thrill out of shopping, and she finds me really hard because I'm like, I don't want more stuff. And what I've actually just done, well, at Christmas time, we let her buy the kids a Whirly subscription.
Yeah.
And it was for Christmas and birthday because they're January babies, so it was a joint present. And that's brilliant. And we're still getting joy out of it all the time. So it is the gift that keeps on giving. And in that case, I actually choose the toys. But she's also just bought a subscription to my site, which was obviously to support me. But what I said is, you own the subscription. You choose the clothes, because I know that everything on there is great, and I know it's not adding more stuff because, you know, I know that she needs stuff at the moment, and I know it's all really nice. So she's getting the pleasure of being able to choose the clothes and choose them actually on a quarterly basis, but equally not feel like she's kind of undermining my sustainability values and creating more stuff that I don't need. So, you know, it's also thinking a bit more creatively about those things as well.
My mum was like awful, you know, she'd be doing the Sainsbury's shop and she'd just, you know, chuck in a packet of baby grows or this, and I was like, oh, like, whoa. And like Christmas and birthday, it was really hard, and so to be able to point them to something like this, can you get them a Whirly subscription, and to be able to send them videos of them unpacking. I love, Charlotte, seeing your little loop unpackage videos when people are all excited seeing their things come, and you know, so sending them videos of them opening it, and you know, and it, like you said, for all of these things, it is the gift that keeps on giving, because you keep getting these new things. Guys, if you've got any questions, we're going to have to start wrapping up, but pop them in the ask a question box. So yeah, Gavin said, Charlotte, are the brands you're working with addressing their material types? And Malcolm's put quite a few comments in the chat about hemp as well. So have either of you got any experience of sort of hemp clothes? It's still, I think, is having difficulty shrugging off its slightly kind of hippie background thing, isn't it? But I think, you know, it is from what I've read, a phenomenally kind of useful material. Do you know of any of the brands that you've mentioned are starting to look at it?
Not that I'm aware of. And the only place I come across hemp on a fairly regular basis is through cloth nappies, because I use cloth nappies with both my children, and hemp is incredibly absorbent, so it's a really great fabric for cloth nappies. But I don't think it's something that our brands are looking at. Their main focus, and I think the main focus of most of the more ethical brands, is organic cotton, and using the most. There are all sorts of grades of organic cotton, but the majority of our brands are GOTS certified, so making sure that, you know, all of the practices around it are as good as they can be, both sustainably and ethically. But also, they, as you've said, Jen, you know, like Friggy, for example, it's the quality of the material as well. So it's not just, if you think about thread count in bed sheets, it's like they use the highest thread count that they can do, because that makes the fabric tougher. So although it has a slightly higher production impact, because obviously it's a greater weight of cotton, because it lasts longer, that over discounts that. I don't know enough about hemp to be able to comment, I'm afraid, Malcolm.
Yeah. Apparently Levi's are doing a lot of work around hemp and that sort of thing. So that's really helpful. Thank you, Malcolm. We're all about kind of imperfect action for the festival, and the whole the whole theme of Sustainable-ish, I guess, is imperfect action. So Sally, have you got one action maybe that you would love people to do, or one change you'd love them to make as a result of listening today?
Ooh, so I think so one thing I think I learnt too late in the piece with a young baby is how important it is to cover up clothes. So when they're young, you know, getting some amazing bibs, right? And get, you know, beautiful dark colors, like get some cute stuff. They actually make outfits look gorgeous, but use the bibs as much as you can. As they grow older, use the art smocks, use feeding smocks, all of that, because if you can actually protect their clothes and prevent them from getting stains in the first place, you dramatically reduce all that time, like soaking, stain removal. You can wash stuff a little bit less. Clothes last longer, all of that. So I think just with young children, really focusing on bibs, smocks, all of that, and getting your child used to it as early as you can, so they don't kick up a fuss.
Yeah, somebody I interviewed on one of the podcast episodes, that was her tip, was even for you know, older children, like I can't remember hers, were like 3 and 5 or something, they all wear an apron at dinner time. And like
Makes
my
sense, yeah.
is just the worst at tipping his dinner down him. So, you know, it's always like tomato pasta, isn't it? Like, So like you said, if you can make that just normal, that everybody puts their aprons on, and the apron doesn't have to be washed even every day. It can just, you know,
be stuck in the washing up bowl instead of.
That's a genius one. I love that one. Thank you, Sally. Charlotte, how about you? If you got one action you'd love people?
I mean, that's definitely up there with mine. And actually, we've not got onto it, but I've got that in my notes. But then beyond that, if you don't cover up the clothes, or if they do get dirty, then laundry skills are amazing. And until I started using cloth nappies, I was the worst, right? My clothes got stains on them, and I never knew how to get them out. And because of the cloth nappy community seems to be built on laundry. Like, all of the chat is about when you start using cloth nappies, you get excited about laundry. But it has really helped. My children's clothes don't get ruined by stains, and you know, it's one of the biggest things that people talk to me about as they're reticent to renting. But children's clothes get ruined. They don't have to. Covering them up is the first thing, but the second thing is it's not hard. You just have to know how to launder. And I'll share something in Facebook after this, because we've not really got time to go into it in detail. We've pulled together a laundry guide because obviously it's in our interest to help people launder better. But because it genuinely changed my life a bit when I learned how to do laundry properly, because, you know, I don't stress about them getting dirty anymore. I know I will get nearly every stain out. Like 3 key points. Always do a cold pre-wash, because hot water sets stains. So you do a cold pre-wash when you're washing to loosen up stains, and then you run your normal cycle. Wash at 40 if you can, because it's less damaging to the fibers, but it's hot enough to activate detergent, so it should get most stains out.
30, is that not good enough?
30 is great for adult clothing, but for children's clothing that are and I know environmentally 30 is better. But to get stains out, it doesn't tend to activate detergent at 30. Particularly non-bio detergent needs a higher temperature to activate. So I tend to say 40 is a kind of happy medium. And then never, ever, ever use a tumble dryer. Because, I mean, obviously environmentally it's a disaster. But it will wear out clothes because it damages the fibers. Because if you imagine that it makes the fibers do this, so it wears the fibers out, but also it sets stains. So again, the heat, if you've got a stain in there, it might not come out from your first wash. If you keep washing clothes and you keep putting them in the sunshine to dry, eventually the stains will fade and disappear. As soon as you put them into a tumble dryer, that's it. The stain's there forever. So they're my kind of 3 top laundry tips. And it's only a tiny change to make to your life. It doesn't, you're washing anyway. It's just about how you do it. It's nothing magic. There's no like major serious thing that you need to do. Just tweak it a little bit, and actually you'll find those clothes last so much longer, and then you can resell them. You can sell them to Sally, or if you're renting them, you know, you don't have to worry about them coming back damaged.
And Kerry's put Chateau, I probably haven't said this right, Chateau du Savon do a great natural stain block remover. I don't know if either of you have come across this, but my kids now at primary school, marker pens. I don't know how they do it. They literally dab them on each other, on themselves, and it's impossible. Like, because we get
don't come out
to the pre-loved thing, and it's got marker pen stains on it. And it's like, has anyone got a magic solution for that?
You know, my 3-year-old recently, I shouldn't admit this, but she drew on one of her rented dresses. I was like, I'm going to kill you. I'm literally going to kill you. I gave her she's got a dry little whiteboard we're teaching her letters on, and it's only a little mark, but it's right here, right on the front. I tried all of the tips, milk, alcohol, blah de blah. It didn't come out, but it did fade. And now 3 washes later, it's faded and faded and faded, and basically I don't know if it will fully come out, and if it doesn't, you know, then I'll have to that's fine. That was my bad. I should have put a bib on her, because actually she was coloring, you know, I should have known. But following that kind of cold wash, 40-degree wash with full detergent and drying in the sun, it is fading, and I'm hopeful that actually after kind of 10 washes it will have gone. But it's a bit difficult if it's a full school shirt and they're like all over it, and I know it's a nightmare. I
mean, to be fair, I don't, with my kids, they just, you know, if their school stuff is trashed, they go into school with trash stuff because it's only going to get more trashed. You know, I'm not really that sort of fussy about it, but certainly if people like, you know, if you want to buy it on secondhand. Have you got any sneaky laundry tips, Sally, just very quickly for the end?
Oh, I think I love the tips Charlotte's given, and I need to try the cold pre-wash myself. Actually, I'm going to start doing that one. I think the other one is soaking. I mean, you can also do a lot with pre-soak. I haven't found an amazing natural alternative, and I'm very open to suggestions. But you know, using nappy sand, I found that really can work wonders. You know, doing whites for a couple of days even, and it's amazing how much you can get out. That's probably the main thing with laundry. And I think, just always line drying. I think, you know, it actually makes, I'm finding too, kind of, you know, living in London as well, and often having combined washers, dryers seem to be impossible anyway. So it feels so much easier just to put your clothes out in a clothes rack, and they seem to dry pretty fast with the heating anyway.
Yeah, and you don't even have to have a garden. I mean, I know it's optimal, but I mean, we've got a garden and nearly always our clothes are inside, but put them in a window, because UV light is a natural, it's a natural disinfectant. So it will kill, it does kind of kill some bacteria, but it bleaches, it does bleach things. So put your clothes rack in a window. It doesn't have to be bright sunshine. It just has to be the UV that you get from the normal light.
Oh, and one more thing, this isn't for baby clothes or pregnant women, but something I love is putting some eucalyptus oil in the wash. It is amazing as a sanitizer, cleaning. Do not use it with young children because you've got to be really careful with essential oils, but just the freshness and the smell. It is quite expensive to get here. It's a lot cheaper in Australia, but it's quite incredible for those sanitizing properties, especially, you know, in your towels and your sheets.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Oh, this has been, I'm so thrilled that like these kind of models exist now, and it's just becoming easier and easier for people to access this kind of much more circular economy and things. So you're both absolutely kind of trailblazing the way, and thank you for sort of
trying our best. We've both only just launched, so
well, come just actually quickly share your, I've popped the links up higher up in the chat, but Charlotte, where can we come and find you on social media and things?
Well, I'm going to put a post into the festival with my laundry guide, because you can come and download it off the site. And like this is a kind of printout version of it, but it's a really neat little thing that you can stick on your washing machine. So I'll put that link in there. But on social, it's The Little Loop on Facebook and The Little Loop Clothing on Instagram, and we'd love to have people follow us. I'll put the links in here as well.
Super. Yeah, I'll pop that. What I'll do is I'll pop this replay. I'll pop the link to the replay up, and if you put any links or anything on that thread, that'd be perfect.
Wonderful.
Sally, where can we find you?
Yeah, so you can find us at pure_bundle on Instagram, and then Pure Bundle on Facebook, and the website purebundle.co.uk. And we have a couple of downloads at the moment on our website. One is actually a baby clothes guide to help with all the bits and pieces you need, sizing, all the sorts of stuff you need to know about new garments, that kind of thing. And another one about trying to get through lockdown with kids. So you can find them both on the website too.
It's like the hardest thing in the world.
It's crazy.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. And do go and follow everybody. All right. Take care.
Thanks so much for having us. Thanks, everyone.